In this full stack project, you'll learn how to build and deploy an impressive e-commerce app made with Next 13, Sanity, and Stripe from start to finish. This project has every major feature you would expect from a modern e-commerce app, such as an attractive and accessible user interface, a powerful shopping cart where customers can add, update, and remove items from their cart, the ability to sort products by different criteria, such as price and date, an advanced filter component that enables users to select products according to properties like category, size, and color, as well as a full text search to find any product with ease. Customers will be able to choose products from a range of sizes and view different product images through a custom image gallery that you'll create for each item. And when customers are ready to check out, they can review and manage items in their cart, see and change the running total with shipping costs, and then purchase their items through our own custom Stripe checkout page. And to top it off, our app will have a fully responsive design for any size device. Along the way, you'll learn a ton of core Next 13 features, such as React server components with lots of data fetching patterns, as well as route handlers for server-side requests. You'll see how to manage your product data within your application using Sanity with your own custom studio, as well as how to describe data through schemas and query that data using the Grok query language. After that, you'll learn how to charge customers for their products with Stripe using Stripe Checkout, add shipping costs, send invoices, and retrieve information from customers' purchases. And finally, when our app is ready, you'll push your app to the web using Vercel. To get started with this project, the only thing you need to do is click the link in the description to grab the starting code. Not only does it include all the basic code and styles you need, it also features links to all the tools we'll be using, plus all the essential dependencies you'll need to build our app from start to finish. So pause this video, grab the starting code, and let's get started. Once you've downloaded the starting code for our app, you can grab the app folder with all of our starting code and drag it into your code editor. From there, we can open up the terminal and install our dependencies with npm i. And when that's done, we can run our project with npm run dev. Once it starts up on localhost 3000, we can open it up, and at the moment on our index page, we don't really have anything, at least not compared to the final version of our app. A good place to start for us is going to be in the root layout component. This is within the app folder, and that first layout file you see is the root layout. By default, it wraps all of our pages. This is a good place to add things like metadata, as well as any providers that we need. Right now, we see that we don't have a title or any metadata really. From the layout file, if you export a variable named metadata, we can add a bunch of our standard metadata values as properties on an object. So for title, we can set that to the name of our app, which is Flare. And when we save, we see the title element in our head is being updated. Instead of using this hard-coded value, you can head to the config folder, and you'll see this site.ts file where we have a bunch of shared values like the site name, description, and links for the footer. Here in site config, we'll set the name property to the value flare, and for the description, this is a site for expertly designed goods for the workspace, home, and travel. If we save that and head back to layout, we can now just use the value site config.name. We can do the same for description, which will be set to site config.description. There's also an icons object. We can see information about it with the help of this metadata type from Next. Icons is an object where we can set the favicon using the icon property within it to just /favicon.ico. And if you look at your public folder, which is what this is reading from, you'll see that there is a file that will serve as our favicon right here. And with that done, we have some basic metadata. And now's a good point to structure the layout of our application, not only the user interface and what's going to be shared across each page. If we look at the final version of our app, we see that that is going to be a header as well as a footer. No matter what page we go to, this is visible. But if we turn it to dark mode, we can better see that there's this colorful blob in the background as well. If we find our first div in layout, you'll see that it wraps some children, which is all the contents of the page itself, whatever page that we're on. Those three components that we identified will be around the page content. The site header will be up at the very top. The site footer will be at the bottom. And the site blob will be right underneath the header. And if we save, the basic appearance of our app is now shaping up. However, none of the functionality is there just yet. A lot of that is going to be included with the help of a special providers component, which will wrap around this div. So it wraps all of the page content and all of these components. This is important for React context to work properly, which is what we're using when we add a number of different providers here within this providers component. And just one note about all of the components that we've been using. They've already been included up at the top of our file. You'll see that we're importing from a components folder all of the different components that we've been using. You can see that components folder adjacent to our app folder. If you open that up, you can see all of the different components that we're going to be using in order to build out our app. So now we'll head to the providers component. All of these providers are going to wrap the children that are received between the opening and closing tags here. That is all of the page content and all of the components here. We're going to set up all of the providers that we have above. We're going to have a cart provider from use shopping cart to help us add shopping cart functionality. We'll have this toaster component that will allow us to show toast notifications when a user performs a given action, like adding or removing an item from their cart. This Tailwind indicator is a really neat one that allows us to figure out the different breakpoints we're on because we're using Tailwind to style everything. And we also have a theme provider that allows us to toggle between dark mode and light mode. We have a fragment here wrapping our children, and we'll start with the first one, which will be our cart provider. So we want an opening and closing tag. For our cart, we want to set the currency using a currency code. I'll be using US dollars or USD. I'll add the prop should persist so that it persists our state in local storage. We'll add a cart mode of checkout session. We'll see how to create a checkout session with Stripe to allow users to check out the items that they've added to their cart. And finally, we'll add a Stripe public API key. Now we don't have that just yet, but it's going to come from our .env file. So if we head to .env in the root of our project, we'll see that there is a next public Stripe public key, and we're just going to copy the name of this environment variable and insert it here. We want to make sure that we include process.env and then include the name of our environment variable, and then we can add just an exclamation point to avoid the type error. Then within the cart provider, we're going to wrap our providers around each other. We're then going to have the theme provider with the attribute class, which is necessary for it to work with Tailwind. Set default theme to system. So whether it's light or dark mode is going to be according to the user's preferences, and we want to use the enable system prop. Then above children, but within theme provider, we're going to include toaster, which won't have a closing tag, so it's going to be a self-closing component, and then we'll include Tailwind indicator underneath it. So that's it for our providers. We can save everything there. We can save layout. And the next step will be to move on to the home page and to see how to integrate Sanity with our app to be able to more easily manage and display our store's products. To get started with Sanity, we'll head to sanity.io, and to create a new account, you can just click on the Start Building button. You'll be given some steps to set up Sanity Studio. However, I've already configured that for you. We just need two values that are included in this command that they've given us to run in our terminal. You just need to grab the project ID. You can also grab this from the URL, which you can add to the .env file and add it to next public Sanity project ID. And you want to include the dataset production for next public Sanity dataset. Just set that environment variable to the value production. If you were to go through the entire process of setting up Sanity, it would create all of the different files that you see here. In the app folder, it would create a folder called Studio with a page. The Studio is where we're going to be able to work with Sanity and work with all of our different products. It's going to create a Sanity folder with a lib folder and some different utilities that are helpful for working with Next.js. And it would also create this .env file. So once you have your project created, we can head to our terminal and we can restart our development server to load those two new values. And we can head to localhost 3000/studio. When we do that for the first time, we'll get this prompt saying to access our content, we need to add the following URL as a core's origin. We just want to tell Sanity the development server, the port that we're running on, and that it allows us to access all of our content on it. We just need to hit continue and then add localhost 3000 as the core's origin. From there, you might need to log in one more time. And once you do, if you see something like this, Sanity is set up correctly, and we should see that we have no document types. We obviously haven't told Sanity the content, the shape of the content that we want to manage, and we can do that through schemas. Before we get started with that, however, to make it a bit easier to head to our studio, we can add a link to our header. So if we head to Site Header and Components, at the very end of our header, after our theme toggle, which we have here, we can add a conditional and say, if we're in development, if process.env.node.env equals development, then we want to return and show a link to Studio. Now, why is this only in development? Well, when this is pushed to production, we don't want anyone else to be able to access the Studio. It's password protected, as you just saw, by having to log in through Sanity. However, we don't want users to know about it. So here we'll add a link from Next.js, where the href is set to /studio. Within it, we'll add a button. This is coming from our components /UI folder. We'll set the size to small. The variant of the button will be ghost. And in it, we'll add an edit icon from the Lucid React icon library, where we'll set the classes h5 to give it a height of 5 or 20 pixels and a width of 5. And then when we save that, if we were on our home page, we could easily navigate to our studio just by clicking on this edit button. We also want to hide our header when we're in the studio because it prevents us from doing some important things. It actually hides the publish button within Sanity Studio. So to be able to remove or hide the component, we can use a hook called usePathName from next/navigation to get the current path name that we're on. And in this case, it would be /studio/desk. We can write a conditional where if path name starts with /studio, we want to return null and hide the component. So if we were to save that, now that's gone. And finally, we can move on to structuring our schema. We can describe the different document types. And in our case, we're just going to have one, and that is our product. If we go to our Sanity folder in the root of our project, I've created this schemas folder, and within it we have this product schema.ts file. Using this product object, we're going to create our schema and define all of the different properties, or fields as they're called in Sanity, that will be on each product. These properties are of course defined by Sanity, and to get some help in figuring out whether we've configured our schema properly or not, we can use the define type helper from Sanity to wrap our object. Our product is going to have, first of all, a name, and we're going to call this lowercase p product. We're going to give it a title of products, capital P and plural. This is what we're going to see in the Sanity Studio. And we're going to give it a type of document. Now all of its fields are going to go on an array. And to get type information for all the individual fields, we can use the define field helper. You can get a good idea of all of the different properties that we're going to have here by looking at the final version of our app. We see that there's going to be an image, which is in fact different images. We're going to have sizes for our products, a price, a currency, a description, as well as some additional metadata like the color and category. Our first field will be a name, set to name. Title will be capitalized. type will be string. I'm not going to use define field for each of these fields, but feel free to do so. The next one is going to be the name Slug. Each product is going to have a unique slug that we're going to use for fetching products individually. Title will be capitalized, type will be slug, and using this options object, we can set the source of the slug to name. This will allow us to easily slugify it to create a slug out of the name within the Studio user interface. And after that, we'll have the name images for our image gallery, with the title images, with type array, and of to define each of the array elements of type image. Make sure you include this object within an array. Next, we'll have name categories for our categories field with the title capitalized, type array, but this time of type string. And we're going to copy this. We're going to copy categories and paste it in 2 more times. So we're going to use it to make our sizes field and our colors field because they are going to have the same type. And we're going to have a description, as we mentioned, title capitalized. And as you would expect, it's going to be of type string. We can copy this 2 more times because we're going to have a SKU, a unique identifier for each product, which is going to be of type string, and we're going to have a currency field, which is capitalized and of type string. And last one, we're going to have a price field, and this is going to be of type number. Now that we have that, we can save it, and to load it and to tell Sanity about it, we need to go to within the Sanity folder, go to schema.ts, and we want to import the product object from the product schema file. So that's going to come from @/sanity/schemas/product schema. And when we save both of those files, if we go back to our studio, we now see underneath content, this products option. We don't have any products just yet, but if we were to click on the create button, it would give us a really nice set of inputs to be able to add all of the content that we need here. And this is all according to the different types, data types that we specified. We're not going to take the hard approach in creating products. We're going to see how to seed our Sanity data, and all this data is going to come from a special inventory file within our config folder. You'll see some types here. And if you look at this inventory array, this includes all of the data that we specified according to the types that we specified within our schema. Now to load all of this, we're going to need to go to our project at sanity.io. So not our local studio page, but to the official Sanity website. Make sure you're logged in, go to your project, and we're going to need to go to API, the API tab, and go to tokens. We want to add an API token. This is so we can seed our data, so we can give it the name of seed data. We want to give it editor permissions and hit save. We're going to be given this particular token, which we can copy. And if we head to Sanity and we go to the lib folder within it and go to client, if we go to create client, we can add a token right here as a string. And this is going to enable us to seed all of the data included in our inventory. And this is with the help of a special script. You'll be able to find this in the lib folder in seed.ts. You can see everything that's happening here. We're using the Sanity client to add all the products as well as seed all of the images as well. So to get this working, we can head to our index page. We can just go to the app folder and go to page. And what's so great about Next 13 is the ability to use React Server components. It allows us to write a really succinct syntax for performing async operations on the server. You can see right now we're just exporting a component from our page file. To seed our data, we just need to make our function, our component, async, just like we would a normal JavaScript function, and we can await and call our async function here, seed sanity data. We just need to import that, and when we save, and if we open our terminal, provided we have the index page open, let's navigate back to it. If we look in our terminal, we'll see the log sanity data seeded. And if we go back to our studio, you'll now see we have all of our items here with all of the appropriate values and images. If there's an error in seeding the data, as you can see here, there's just an error that says invalid image. Fortunately, I've included all of the product images here within public in this products folder. So here it looks like, in particular, I can go through these, but it looks like the last one didn't seed properly. So we don't have any images. We can fix this by just uploading the image manually. And once you've uploaded an image, you can just hit this button in the top right-hand corner, hit select, and choose the image that you just uploaded. You can see that the slug wasn't generated as well. If we hit the generate button, you can see what I was talking about. It automatically slugifies the name and inserts it here. With that, we can hit publish, and we can head back to our page and remove the seed script. And now, navigating back to our home page, we'll figure out how to use Sanity to fetch all of our products and display them here, not only on our home page, but across all of our pages. Using the created Sanity client, here within page, we can await client.fetch to perform a query. And this query is going to return an array of products. We want to fetch all of the products to be displayed on the home page. So we're first going to add a return type of Sanity product as an array. In other words, an array of Sanity products. And to fetch, we need to provide a query which we can write using the grok helper. So we're going to be using the grok query language that Sanity comes with. And to fetch all of our products, we can say asterisk, and we can write a filter within a set of square brackets where we want to specify that the type, the underscore type of all of our data should be equal to the string product. So that's the underlying product type that we created in our schema, and we can insert the return value in a variable called products. And for right now, let's just console log the products. We can save page, and keep in mind that because we're performing this query on the server, we're going to need to open up not the browser console, but we're going to need to open up our terminal. You can see here, since I'm already on the home page, we see an array of products. You can see all the different fields here. You can see the internal fields that Sanity includes, such as type and updated at, as well as created at, and the product ID. To be able to specify which fields we want back, because we don't in every case want to grab all the fields that are on each product, we can use a set of curly braces, and we can specify all the different fields that we like separated by commas. So we can grab the ID, the created at field, as well as the name, SKU, all the images, the currency, the price, the description. And if we look at what we got back, specifically for Slug, you'll see that Slug was returned to us as an object. So we can write our own custom field. We can name it what we like. In our case, we still want to call it Slug. We just need to add a set of double quotes and a colon to say we want Slug, that property to be set to slug.current. So when we save again, and if we scroll down, we see just the fields that we specified being returned to us. So now let's actually populate our page. We'll begin with the header up at the top. The name and description are going to come from siteconfig.name, and the description from siteconfig.description. Within this H1, we want to display how many products our users currently viewing. We can just replace the 0 with products.length, and we can say that many results, but it might not be plural, we might want it to be result if it's just one result, so we can add within a set of curly braces a ternary where if products.length is equal to 1, we want it to be singular, but we can add an S to results if not. And after displaying the number of results, we want to add a number of different components that will allow us to sort our products. So we'll have a component for doing that. We're going to have a number of filters here underneath on the left-hand side, and we're also going to have a product grid. We'll begin underneath the H1. We see here a comment with product, the text product sort. So we will bring in product sort, we'll include that. And in the final version of our app, if no products are displayed, say we've included a filter that returns no products, we want to display this no products found message. And to do that, we're going to head down to this div underneath the H2 here, and we're going to take this class name and we're going to use a helper function. It's being imported as CN, and this is going to allow us to conditionally apply a class. We can copy this class that's being applied on a large breakpoint where it's setting the number of grid columns to 4, which is what we're going to be using by default when we have products. So if products.length is greater than 0, we can write a ternary and say apply this class. Otherwise, to display this no products found message, we want the left-hand side, all the filters here, to take up 1 width and this message to take up 3 widths. We can do that with on a large breakpoint with grid columns and insert our own custom value of 1 FR, 1 fractional unit, and then for the second column, 3 fractional units to take up 3 times the width. And finally, we can add product filters where we have that comment and the product grid component where we have that comment underneath. Again, we have the very basic appearance of these components, but we don't have the functionality yet. We'll get started by displaying all of our products within our product grid. To do that, we'll need to pass down all of our products data as props. So we can take a reference to products and create a new prop on product grid of the same name, products. And we can jump into product grid. You'll see here that we have this props interface. On it, we can specify the one prop that we're passing down on our props object. And this interface is helpful to declare the type of each of our props within our components. So this is going to be set to Sanity product, an array of Sanity products. And we can, from the props object, destructure the products property off of that. And to declare our types, we just need to add a colon and then provide the name of our interface here, which will be props. And we can now say, we have this conditional up at the top. We can say that if products.length is equal to 0, we can display our no products found message. But if we actually have some products, we can replace both of these empty arrays with a reference to products. We want to take each product, and first of all, since we're mapping over it here, I've already taken the trouble to create the basic structure of each of our grid elements. It's going to consist of an image, the name of the product, the price, and this is all going to be a clickable link to be able to navigate to its individual page. Since we're mapping over these links, we're going to need to provide a unique key, and that's going to come from product._ID. The href, the link, should be set to /products/product.slug. If you take a look at the individual page, it'll be on the products route and then slash the unique slug for each of the products. Then as for the image, we're going to be using next image. These images are going to be served once again from Sanity, and this enables us to, using next image, create an image source by using the URL for image helper. Again, this is provided by Sanity, and pass in product.images, which is an array. We want to grab the primary image, which is the first element in that array, and then as a method to URL for image, say .url. And we can set the alt of the product to product.name. We want the width of these images to be fixed at 225 and the height to be 280. And if we save both these files just temporarily, we should be able to see our images here, but we can make the image loading experience a bit better by adding a shimmer effect. This may or may not be visible. You might have seen it briefly right there, a kind of fade in effect while our image is in the process of being loaded. To add that effect, we just need to set placeholder to blur, and we're going to use the blur data URL prop to using a template string to set that to data:image / svg plus xml semicolon base 64 comma, and then we can use the helper function to base 64 and pass to that function another function called shimmer that takes a width and height of our image, which is again 225 and 280. This looks pretty complex. This is included in the next documentation as well as both of these helper functions. Fortunately, now that we've written this, we can just go ahead and copy this going forward. But this gives us a really nice effect for not too much code. And then finally, we can include the name in our H3 from product.name, and the price we can format with the help of the format currency string helper. And this comes from our shopping cart library, use shopping cart. For this function, it takes an object where it will receive the currency, which again comes from the product, from the currency field, and the value is going to come from product.price. So let's save all this, and now we've got a pretty good looking product grid. And the next step will be to make it possible to sort according to some different fields. So if we go to our deployed app, you'll see we have the option of newest, which is the default of how it's sorted by default, all the items in this product grid. And we can also sort according from low to high price. You can see the lowest price item is the belt, all the way up to the Brooks sunglasses. If we go from high to low, obviously that's reversed. So not only do we have to add these different options here in our select, but we need to figure out how to filter our products, or rather to order them. This select is included within the product sort component. So let's head there. We don't need to pass any props to it. And you'll notice up above we have this sort options array. Right now, when we click on our select, we just see the text sort options. We want to iterate over these different options and display them here within select content. So we can remove that and we can say sort options.map, where we can take each option and we can use the select item component. This is all coming from our UI folder from components UI select, where the key is the option name. So each of these options have a name and a value. We'll provide the value prop as well on select item set to option.value and display the text between the opening and closing tags from option.name. So we're displaying these different options now, but when we click on it, we have to figure out how are we going to reorder our products. And this is a nested component. It's a component within page. How are we going to change this query up here? Are we going to use something like state? Well, unfortunately, we can't just bring in use state and use the traditional lifting state up pattern where we pass down a callback to then change the state in the parent component. We have to have a little bit different mental model when working with React Server components. If you look at the final version of our app, if you click on newest or any of these options, you'll see that what we're changing in the URL is a specific query parameter. You'll see if it's price, if it's a price option that's being selected, it's the price query parameter, and it's being set to the value descending or ascending. And there's another one called date. This matches what we see as the value in our sort options here. And what we want to do is that whenever this changes, whenever we detect that an item is selected, we want to change the URL. We want to navigate to the URL that we specified here. To do that, we can on the select use the onValueChange callback, and we can write an inline function where this gives us the value, and we can use the useRouter hook from next navigation, and we can take that reference to router and use router.replace and replace the current URL with the one specified on value. So if we save sort and we now try changing the select, we see our URL change as well. We can get access to those query parameters or search parameters as they're known in Next.js by heading back to our page, and we have direct access to them within the props of our server component. So if we were to take a look at our props object, we can console log it for now, and we'll refresh and take a look at our terminal. We'll see that we have nothing on this params property. We'll cover what params is later, but on search params, we have a key value pair that's included on an object, so we can get the key price and the value to be ordered on, which is descending. So to piece this all together, using the Grok query language, we can order our queries by first adding a vertical line, and then using the order operator, where between a set of curly braces we can specify on what field we want to order on. We can say, for example, price, and we can specify whether we want to be ASC, ascending, in ascending order, or in descending order. So if we were to write that, we see price in descending order from greatest to least. If we were to reverse that, our items are reversed. We have everything now that we need in order to dynamically change our query to change the products whenever our search parameters change. We need to add the search params property to props, and we know that two of those values are going to be date. It may not be there, so we want to say date optional. This could be undefined. It's of type string. And price, also optional and of type string. Once again, we can destructure search params, make sure to say the props object is of type props or props interface. And now we can add a custom order variable. So we can remove all this and just insert, because this is a tagged template literal, we can insert our own dynamic value that'll come from order. We can say that we want to include the price order and the date order. And what these are going to consist of are two more variables, price order, which will just be an empty string for now, and date order. And we just have to conditionally just write some conditional logic to say, if we have a price, and this is going to come from search params.price, then we want to write, using the syntax that I showed you, we want to order on the price field using the value from search params.price. Otherwise, if that param isn't there, we just want price order to be an empty string, and the same applies for date order. The only difference is that this is going to be from search params.date, and we're going to be ordering on the created at field. So let's save this and test this out. We'll try sorting by newest. If we took a look at the value of the created at field for each of these products, we could confirm that this is the case. I'll just trust that it is. If we order the price from high to low, it's ordered properly, and it seems to be the same for low to high. So we're able to dynamically change our query here, and we can improve it a bit by using object destructuring, and from search params just grabbing date and price. So we can now remove all those references to search params, and it becomes a lot shorter. As I mentioned, the default sort is by newest, and we don't have any query parameter for that. So we do want to provide a default value for date of descending to make sure that we don't get an error. The next step will be creating our different filters here. We see that we have a bunch of sections. We have 3 sections, which we know according to the fields that we created for our product that these sections should be categories, sizes, and colors. We'll head to, if we go back to our index page, head to product filters. You'll see above our component an array with all the data that we need. including the name of these sections and the different options. I've included those for you, as you can see in the final product. So we want to display all of these using the data in this filters array. We're mapping over filters. Within this span, we're just going to change section to section.name. And within section.options, we're mapping over each of the labels. We have a key provided here, and we have a checkbox. We just need to add the label text, and that's going to come from option.label. If we were to save that, we can see that we have all the sections and different options here, but when we click on the label, the box isn't checked. The reason for this is that we need to add an ID to the checkbox. So this is going to be set to a dynamic value of filter-section.id dash, and then we're going to include the index of the option. So this, we can grab this index from the second parameter of the map function. So that's going to be a unique value, and we need to add the HTML4 prop on the label. So whenever we click on these labels, the checkbox is checked. But more importantly, once again, when we click on these, we want to change the search params. You'll see that if we were to click on the category of bags, it changes the search param of category to bags. And this is going to be a little bit trickier because we want to be able to append multiple options. So you'll see here that we want the bags that are one size. We have two results here. So not only is category added, but the size param is added as well. So to make this work, we're going to need to add an on-click to our checkbox. So we'll add an inline function here. We're going to get access to the event, and we're going to use a new hook within product filters. It's going to be called use search params. We're going to get access to the search parameters in our URL, and we're going to need this to be able to modify them. So within our function, we're going to say new URL search params and pass in the search params reference that we created, and we're going to put the result in a new variable called params. This is something that we can then edit based off of whether the checkbox has been checked or not. We can detect that by saying event.currentTarget.dataset.state is equal to checked. This is just an internal value of our checkbox component. If checked is true, we want to say params.delete section.id. We want to remove that entirely. You can see that in the final version. When we have something that's checked and we want to get rid of it, we click it one more time and it's removed from the URL. So we're not filtering on that anymore. Otherwise, if it's not checked, we want to add it with params.set, where we need to pass in the name and value. So the name is going to come from section.id and the value from option.value. And the most important thing is that we need to say router. So again, we're going to use router, get a reference to that. Router.replace, and then using a template string / params.toString. So let's save all this, and when we attempt to change the category, we see the category is then appended onto our URL with the value of bags. Now, we're not doing any filtering just yet. There's one thing that we need to tackle first, and that is if we refresh the page, we see the URL stays the same, but our option isn't selected. So we need to then add some code that's going to set the value of checked on our checkbox component and check and see if a given option should be displayed as checked because it is in fact in the URL. So for this, we can convert these search params to an array that we can easily work with by saying array.from search params.entries. And this is going to give us something which we'll call search values. It's going to allow us to determine the value of checked by iterating over search values and using the sum function, where it will return true if just one element in this array meets the condition that we supply. So we're going to add another set of parentheses and destructure the key and value for each of these elements. And we want to see if the key of this particular option is equal to the section ID and the value is equal to option.value. So now, even if we refresh the page, we'll see that bags is selected, or whatever category that we've chosen. One other helpful thing is that because these different sections collapse, in the final version you'll see here that if we have something checked, we have just one option checked in a given section, you see it displayed here, what we have checked. This is makes it a lot easier for our users to see what items are being displayed, what items they filtered or searched for. So to add that bit of data, we can, within the span here that's next to the name, add a ternary and say search params.get. We want to get a search param according to the section, so sizes, categories, colors. If that exists, then we want to display it within a set of parentheses. So again, we'll use search params.get section ID. Otherwise, we'll just display an empty string. Pretty simple. But once again, we haven't really done any filtering. We've written all the code to be able to change the URL and make our checkboxes work appropriately, but we need to go back to our page and change our query here. We're going to add a few more search params, one for color, category, and size. What's different about this is that we're not going to be using order. We're not ordering anything, we're going to be filtering. So we're going to construct a filter using a filter variable, and we're first of all going to include our product filter. So we can include this once again as just a string that we insert, and our filter is going to start with an asterisk and have our set of square brackets. We'll insert our product filter, and then we want to add all the other filters afterwards. So we're going to have 3 more for now: the color filter, the category filter, and the size filter. So we can insert all of those. Once again, we need to check and see if that search param exists. We can go ahead and destructure color, category, and size from search params. We'll write ternaries. The first one for color, where if color is there, we want to write a string where we say and. So this is how we append multiple filters. We would just add and to chain them one after the other. We can say and to check and see if a given item is in an array, we can just say, for example, if we wanted to see if black was in the colors array, we would insert it as a string using double quotes. But since this is a dynamic value, we'll use the $ curly braces syntax to insert that, and we'll use that same string for each of these for category. The difference being we're finding category string in categories, and size, we're going to find size in sizes. So with all of that added, we can save page, and now immediately you see that we're filtering according to belts. We could do the same for bags, and we can filter according to size as well as color. Now the final, perhaps most helpful manner of searching or filtering for something is by using an actual text search. You'll see that we have that up at the very top, where we can provide actual terms to search for, to filter for. In the case of this bag here, we could say khaki or tote or bag. Remember that this is in the site header component. You'll see that we have a form element here and the input within it. The user is going to be able to type into the form and hit enter and perform that query based off of what they typed. So we'll add an onSubmit to the form. It'll be connected to a function, a local function, onSubmit, where we'll get access to the event, and this will be a React synthetic event coming from an HTML form element. We will say event.preventDefault to prevent the page from reloading. To grab what's typed into the search input, we can use form data constructor and pass in event.currentTarget, where we get back form data, And from form data, we can use the get method to select according to the ID, which is search. So we then get access to the search query, the text that was typed in, and we can change the URL once again using router from use router. So we can say router.replace / search is the name of the search query param set to search query the value that was typed in. So we can search for tote, and that changes the URL, but now we just see all of our products. Before we get to the actual filtering, you'll see that if we refresh the page once again, our search input's not populated. So how do we grab the query param and use it to populate our input? Once again, we'll use the use search params hook. We'll get our search params, and to get our default search query, we can say search params.get search, and we can say, using the double question mark or the nullish coalescing operator, you can say if that's not there, then we'll just use an empty string. And this is going to be passed as the default value to the input. So we'll set default value to default search query. And when we save that, we now have our input populated here to allow the user to see what they searched for previously. Now heading back to our home page, you can anticipate what we're going to need to do. We can grab the search param. We'll include that on our props object. We'll destructure search, but the way to do a text search according to a given text value is with the string, again, and name match in double quotes the value search. So name is what we're searching according to. If we wanted to change that to description, we could do that as well. We want the name field to match what we typed into search. And this is going to be for our search filter value if search is there. If not, we'll use an empty string, and we'll make sure to append that to our filter string here. So let's save and search for tote. Immediately you see the products displayed, they match the text tote. You can change that to canvas to just see this one here. Perfect. When we click on an individual product from our product grid, we'll be taken to /products/ and then the product slug. If we head to app and take a look at the products folder, you'll see that there is this slug folder wrapped in square brackets, meaning it's a dynamic route. And we have a page here with no content. What we need to do is use the slug to fetch the given product to be able to display all this information that we see here. And you see on the individual product page that we have our main image, as well as all of the important info about our product, including the name, price, description, size, as well as an add to cart button. And we have an image gallery at the bottom. So heading back to our product page, we want to make our function async, make it a async component, and we want to await client.fetch, and in this case we're returning a sanity product. And for our query, once again we'll use grok. We know from the home page that we need to at least include a product filter, so we'll set type. We'll include a filter where type is equal to product, but we also want to add a condition and make sure that the slug, and we know that that value is going to come from slug.current, is equal to, in double quotes, the slug that we're receiving from parameters. So remember that we had both a params property as well as a search params property. Well, params allows us to get access to the slug, or whatever the dynamic path is, if we have a dynamic route like this one. So we can grab the params property from the props object. We just need to declare it, and params is going to have a value of slug, which is going to be a string, and so the value is going to come from params.slug, and can put the return value in a product variable and log it to see if this works. We'll make sure to navigate to an actual product. So this query is being performed properly, but you'll see that we're getting it returned to us within an array. So we just want the first element. So to be able to do that, we can get the 0th element by adding a set of square brackets again at the end of the query. If we load that one more time, we should just get an object. For this query, we want to get a number of properties. The ID created at. We're also going to have an ID, a custom ID field set to the underlying ID. We'll grab the name, the SKU, all the images, again, price, currency, as well as the description, sizes, categories, colors, and we're going to again grab the slug. It'll be set to slug.current. We will bring in the components product gallery and product info. You'll see that we have product gallery at the top and product info underneath. We're getting an error right now for product gallery, so we'll comment that out. For product info, we're going to need to pass the product data down to it, so we'll have a product prop. We'll go into product info and we'll make sure to add that the props object. It's going to be of type sanity product. So we'll destructure product and props is going to be of type props. Again, the info is going to be all of the stuff that we see here. And it's going to make it possible to add the given item to the cart with this add to cart button. We'll begin by inserting the product name from product.name as well as the price. Once again, we'll format the currency string where the value is product price and the currency is coming from product.currency. The description in this div is going to be set to product.description. For the size, we're going to use a special helper function called getSizeName. So it's going to convert the actual underlying size to something that's readable. And this is going to be set to product.sizes, and we're going to get the 0th element. We want to then display, if we take a look at a product with different sizes, we want to be able to display some different options that the user can select. So they can select a small belt or a medium belt, because not all products are just going to be one size. We want to display that here with these different buttons from product.sizes. And again, for the displayed size, we're going to use the getSizeName helper and pass size, which is what we're calling each value that we're iterating over. And we'll see in just a second how to actually change that value. If we take a look at the result right now, we don't have an image, but we have all of the text content here. And let's navigate back to the belt where we have a bunch of different options. We want to make it possible to toggle these choices and see the size, the selected size change. So we need to have some state here. And in any component where we're using state, we need to add the useClient directive. This is very important. We can't use state on the server. And to actually use some state, we can bring in the useState hook from React. And we want the default value of our selected size. That's again going to come from product.sizes and then the 0th element. We're going to call the state variable selected size and the setter set selected size. Set selected size. So instead of referencing product.sizes and the 0th element here, we're going to now defer to whatever's in the selected size variable, and we can make this button work by adding an onClick and using an inline arrow function, set selected size to whatever the current size is. And additionally, we can change its appearance. We can see that it's selected or not by changing the variant according to what's in state. If the size that we're iterating over is equal to the selected size, we want it to have a variant of default, otherwise a variant of outline. So that's going to give us a better view of what is actually selected. And the last step here within product info is to actually make this add to cart button work. So what should happen when we add something to the cart? Well, we want to select the size, pass that along when adding it to the cart with our data. So we'll take that data, then when we click Add to Cart, we see the item quantity increment in our shopping cart up at the top, and we also see that toast notification at the bottom. We can do all of this within the Add to Cart function, which needs to be connected to the Add to Cart button just with an on-click. So within Add to Cart, we need to first create our item to add. We're going to create an item variable where we're going to spread in all of the product properties, and we're going to add a special property called product data. This is going to be an object where we're going to include any additional info that should be included when an item is added to our cart. So what we want to know is what size the user selected, and that's going to be set to selected size. Now, to add an item to the cart is really very simple. We just need to call the use shopping cart hook, which is coming from the use shopping cart library. When we call that hook, we get back an object that gives us a method add item. And of course, we could simply call add item and pass item to it. However, if we think about it, when we add an item to the cart a second time, we don't want to add multiple items, we want to increment its quantity. So we first need to check and see if a given item is in the cart. We'll create a variable called isInCart, and to get all of the data of the items that are in the cart from the use shopping cart hook, we can grab the cart details object. And from cart details, it will include a bunch of key value pairs where the keys are the product IDs. So we can see if a given product is in the cart according to its product ID. And we can very simply just say cart details dot, and we're using the question mark here because this might be undefined. And then if there is a key matching product ID here, then we can say it's in the cart. And to coerce this to a Boolean, we can add the double not operator. So now we can detect whether something's in the cart. If it's in the cart, then we would just want to increment the item. And for that, we can use the increment item function and pass in item._ID, or we can add the item if it's not there. As I mentioned, we want to display the cart count in the header, in the site header, but be aware that we're not displaying that at the moment. We're just displaying the hard-coded value of 0. So here too, we need to use shopping cart, and there is a value called cart count, which gives us a number. This can be destructured from that object, and we can just insert it here where we previously had 0 for our cart button. And then finally, the last step is to use the toast hook. This is again with the help of the toaster component that we have. Use toast is going to give us an object. We can call a function from it, the name toast, where we can specify on it all of the relevant information when we're adding something. When we want to display a notification to somebody, such as the title, and at the top we can include the item name, and in parentheses we can include the size that they've chosen by again using getSizeName and pass in selected size. We can add a description by simply saying product added to cart. And one other cool thing that you can add is an action. So this allows us to add a component, and this component is going to allow users to very easily go right to their cart with the help of a link. So we can include a next link that'll point to /cart. This will include a button with the variant of link and the class to separate it from the text content of gap x2 and white space no wrap to make sure that the text here doesn't wrap. And it's going to have the text within a span of open cart, and we're going to use an icon from Lucid React, arrow right with the classes height 5 and width 5. So with all that, let's attempt to add an item to our cart. We'll select medium, click add to cart, and we see here in the bottom right hand corner the name of our product, the size. We see a link to go to the cart page. So everything's working as expected. And now we can move on to adding our image gallery here to to be able to toggle between multiple images to preview the product before a user buys. Again, this is going to use some state because we're making it possible to select one or another image. We see that the main image here changes in response to the state. So by default, the first image, the main image, is being displayed, and we can select any of these. We see this little border around each of the images to see which one is selected. To add this, we'll go to Page and uncomment Product Gallery. This does need the product data passed down to it, so we will pass that down and add it to the props interface of type Sanity Product. We'll destructure that prop and include our props type. We'll make sure that our product gallery component uses client up at the top because again we are using state, and we're going to be working with an array here. So to make sure that the first image is selected in our gallery, we'll use 0 as the 0th index, and the name of this piece of state will be selected image, and the setter will be set selected image. And then we can head down to this empty array and change that with product.images. So we can map over each image, and we want to grab the image index. Since we're iterating over this div, we'll set the key of it to image._key, which isn't included. This is another underlying property which isn't included on the type even though it exists. So we're just going to say that it does exist with this as keyword to kind of overrule TypeScript here. We're going to add an onClick to this div where we're going to change the selected image by passing in the current index. We have an image component here from next. We can set the source with URL for image and pass in the image and call the URL method at the end of it. So we get that back as a string. We want to add a width of 200 and a height of 200. And keep in mind, this is all for the image grid underneath the main image, so it's going to be a bit small. And then to include our shimmer effect, if you'd like to include that, we can just head back to wherever we used it, which was in our product grid. We can copy those two lines and paste those in here. And again, the width is 200, height is 200. Since there's the main image that we have down below, we can paste that in as well. And down here, the source for our main image is going to be set to not image, but product.images. And then from that array, we can use the index, which is again selected image. And we can set the alt text to main product.name image, where the width in this case is 600, the height is 750, and we'll add those to our shimmer function. And let's save page and product gallery. And at this point, let's go to a product with multiple images. We have our main image. We have the ability to toggle between our images here when we click on them, but we don't see what is the current image visually. So to help our user out, we can add this span, which I've commented out. And we just want to display it, this span, if I were to save it as is. You can see it's just a border, an outline for each of these images. We only want to display it when the current image is the selected image. So if we add a conditional and say if index is equal to selected image, then in that case we want to add that outline. At this point we now have our completed product page, and we can move on to our cart page. We want to display a summary of the items that our user has in their cart, where it will also display a subtotal, a shipping estimate, the order total. From there they can choose to check out, or they can also change the quantity of each product that they like, and you can see that we're changing the order total here, and we're changing the number of items in our cart, as well as remove items entirely, where we have toast notifications showing a destructive action if we choose to delete them. So let's head to our cart page. Again, it's an app, and in the cart folder, we're just going to have two components here, one for cart items and one for cart summary. So let's add cart items and then cart summary. We see right now we just have an empty left-hand side of the screen. That's where our cart items are going to be, and our cart summary here is on the right-hand side with all the information about the total cost, as well as a button to check out, which we see is just infinitely loading right now. Within cart items, all of the cart data is stored on the cart details object, again from use shopping cart. If we were to log cart details, you'd see what I was mentioning earlier about the fact that it's an object where each of the individual products, unique products, are added according to their ID as key value pairs. We want to be able to display them, to be able to map over them. We need to convert this to an array. We can do that easily with the help of object.entries. So we can turn that into an array of arrays here, and we just want to grab the second element, which is the product itself. We don't really need the key. So using cart details, we can create a variable cart items where we'll use object.entries, pass cart details to it, and we want to map over this, and again we need to add an exclamation point just to satisfy TypeScript. We'll add a set of square brackets here to immediately destructure each of these elements, and we want to skip the key, so we'll just add an underscore here, grab the product, and we want to just return that. So now we have an array of cart entries, and using that array, if we have no cart items, if cart items.length is equal to 0, we can return a component cart items empty. This is from our components folder. To not display any content, we would see no products added, and prompting users to add products to their cart, and that's just going to be a link. But obviously if we do have items, we want to take those cart items, map over each product, where the key is going to be product._ID. We'll again create an image, so we can copy all the familiar props here. It's going to be 200 by 200. Beneath that, we're going to have a link that will include the product name, so users can go back to the product even when they're in their cart page, and it's going to go to /product/product.slug. After that, we want to display the price here, where we have the text price using format currency string, where value is product.price, currency is product.currency, and here in the set of strong tags that we have, we'll use getSizeName, that function, and pass in the size, as you recall, from the product data object. So product.productData.size. Underneath that, we have this label which tells us the quantity. So we see quantity, comma, name. We'll change name to product.name. And for this input, we want to set the min value of it, because this controls the quantity of a given item in our cart. We want the min value to be 1, the max value to be 10. We could set this to whatever we want. We just don't want the minimum value to be 0 or less than 1. That wouldn't really make any sense. We can set the value to product.quantity. This is a value that is stored internally if we were to take a look at the cart details. And whenever we change the input, we can add an onChange, and we want to get the event to get the value, the current value, and we can use a new function from use shopping cart called setItemQuantity. It's going to take the item according to its ID, so we need to pass in product._ID to that function, and we need to give it a new quantity, a new number value. So we're going to need to use the number function and pass in event.target.value. And then finally, we have our remove button, where if we click on this, we want to add an inline arrow function that calls the remove cart item function, and to it we'll pass our product. Now, this is a local function we have here, and within this function, we're going to get access to the product, and this is going to be of type product. This product type comes from the use shopping cart library from use shopping cart /core. So we want to bring in remove item from use shopping cart and pass in just the ID from product.id. And once again, we'll use a toast notification. So we'll need to use toast. We'll get back an object that gives us a toast property to call. For this toast notification, we'll have the title product.name removed with the description saying that the product was removed from the cart, and the variant set to destructive is going to make our toast notification red to show that a destructive action took place. And if we save cart items, you can see our items here. We can increment and decrement that down to 1 or up to 10, and we can remove it entirely. If we were to refresh, add one more item, go to our cart and remove it, we see that destructive action, and we see our no content here, our cart items empty component. And then this order summary component is going to be pretty simple. If we head to it, we're once again going to use shopping cart up at the top, where we want to grab formatted total price, cart details, and cart count. We're going to first head down to subtotal, where we see the text subtotal amount, and we're going to change that to formatted total price. We're going to assume if we're dealing with physical products that we're going to have a shipping estimate, and the value that I'm going to use is just going to be $5. This is going to be based off of whether we have any items in our cart, so I'm going to make a variable called shipping amount, and if cart count is greater than 0, then we want to set that to 500. Now this is in cents. It's got to be in the lowest denomination of your currency. So when it comes to US dollars, that would be cents. This is totally dependent on which currency that you've chosen. And the shipping amount is 0 if we have no items in our cart. So for shipping amount, we'll replace that with a call to format currency string, and we'll pass in a value of shipping amount with the currency of US dollars. We'll also calculate the total amount, and that has to be the shipping amount plus the subtotal amount, which is the formatted total price. So we will calculate the total amount by taking the total price plus the shipping amount. So we get the raw value here, and then we can format it with format currency string, and we'll pass in the value of, in this case, total amount. So we'll save cart summary, and now we have no products in our cart, but if we were to add one, we'll add 2. We go to it, we can see the updated order summary with the appropriate amount, and we have a shipping value here. If we remove one, we see it decrement by the appropriate amount. If we remove all of it, that goes to 0. The final step in building our app will be to enable users to check out the items that they've added to their cart. We'll make this possible within the cart page. If we head to the top of cart summary, we'll see that there's an on checkout function, which we want to call when we click on this button here at the very bottom. Now, before checking out, we want to add a couple of values. One is a piece of state, so we're going to make sure that we're using the use client directive. We'll add a bit of loading state, which will be initialized to false, called isLoading, the setter set loading. This will be true when we're in the process of creating the checkout. The checkout is going to come from Stripe. We're going to see how to create that within the onCheckout function. But for right now, we want to add a conditional around the loader icon and only display that if isLoading is true. If we're in the process of loading, and additionally we'll add another ternary here to say if we're loading, we want to display the text loading, otherwise checkout. On top of that, we want to disable our checkout button here if we are loading or if we have no items in the cart. So we'll create an isDisabled variable where if isLoading is true or if cart count is equal to 0. We'll add then the disabled prop to our button and set that to is disabled. As I mentioned, we're going to be using Stripe to create a custom checkout for us. So you'll need to navigate to stripe.com, create a free account if you don't have one already, and once you've logged in, you'll be redirected to the dashboard where you'll be given a developer publishable key and secret key. We want to copy first the publishable key, and we'll go to our .env file and add that to next public Stripe public key. And for our secret key, we'll copy that and add it to Stripe secret key. Stripe checkout is going to give us a custom checkout page, which we can configure if we just type in checkout in the Stripe search and navigate to branding for checkout. Here, we can choose the way that we want our store to look within the Stripe checkout page. So we can choose things such as an icon or a logo. We can choose the brand and accent color, and we can use a logo if we head to our public folder and take a look at the logo.png file. And additionally, we can add our brand color, which we might want to set to black, and our accent color as white. This also gives us the ability to customize things like the invoice payment page, the invoice PDF, etc., all of the different things that Stripe offers to our customers. When we've customized it the way we want, we can hit Save Changes, and with our environment variables, we can restart our development server. And the way that we're going to create our checkout is using the onCheckout function, but it's going to make use of some server-side code that's within this API folder. So we see that we have within app this API folder, and within that one called checkout, which contains this route file. Route is going to allow us to use Next.js route handlers, and specifically we're going to be using the post handler to handle a post request that is made to this endpoint. And the endpoint is structured again according to our folder structure. So it's going to start with /API/checkout, and we'll need to make a post request to that. So within post, we're going to get access to request data that's of type request. And we're going to send to this endpoint our cart details. We're going to get that as JSON data, so we can await request.json, and we're going to get our cart details. What's important here is we can't really trust the client and what it sends. If our data somehow has been tampered with, and say somebody's figured out how to change the price, that would be very bad. So we need to figure out a way to validate the data that's been sent and reject this request if it's invalid, if it's different than the official inventory. And for this, we can use the validate cart items helper function from use shopping cart/utilities. Validate cart items takes an inventory, and this comes from that inventory file that we have in our config folder, and we'll pass in cart details as the second argument. This is going to return to us line items if this is valid. And using Stripe, if we go to /lib/stripe, this stripe.ts file, you'll see that we've created a new Stripe client with the Stripe secret key. We can only do this on the server. We've specified a API version for our client. And using that, we can use the checkout API to say await stripe.checkout.sessions. We want to create a new session with the following values. We want to set submit type to pay. We want the mode to be payment, the payments being made, and we want the payment method types, which is an array, to include card. We have a line items property, which should be set to line items that we're getting back from our validate cart items function. We can specify the shipping address collection. This is an object where we need to provide the allowed countries that we ship to. And in my case, I'm just going to choose the US. You need to provide some shipping options since we do have an associated shipping cost. So we can head to shipping, go to product/shipping rates. You see I have one created here. We can create another shipping rate. I mentioned that that was going to be $5 for me, and we could give it a description like ground shipping. And we can include an estimated shipping time if we like. If we save that, that'll be created, and we can just copy the ID that Stripe returns. And shipping options is an array, so we can include multiple shipping options, and we'll just include one object where the property shipping rate is equal to the string that we just copied. We also need to include billing address collection. This should be set to auto. And finally, we need to include the success URL as well as a cancel URL. So the success URL is if the purchase goes through successfully. The cancel URL is if the person exits the checkout page. To send users to the right place, we need to get the origin of the request, which is just going to be in development localhost 3000, or in deployment, it's going to be to our deployed URL. We can get that from request.headers.get, and we can get the origin header to give us that value, which we can use in a template string to say origin/success to take users to the success page. And we can append a session ID query param set to checkout session ID, just like this, between curly braces, and that's going to tell Stripe to include the session ID of the created session in this URL. That's going to allow us to get information about the purchase. And the cancel URL should just be origin/cart to take them back to the cart page. So when we create a session, we're going to get back session data. We'll put that in a session variable, and we just want to return using next response, which we're importing from next/server. We can use the JSON method to return that entire session. Now we can save our route, and if we head back to cart summary, we want to make a post request. So we'll make this function async. We want to set loading at the beginning. We will await fetch, and we'll make it the request to /API/checkout. We'll include some options to set the method of our request to a post. We'll set the body to JSON.stringify cart details. So we'll send all that data to our endpoint. We're going to get back a response from this request. We will await response.json to get back all that JSON data, and we can use a new function called redirect to checkout from use shopping cart, or we can pass in data.id, the ID of the created session. This returns a promise, so we need to await it, and we're going to get back a result. If there was an error in redirecting, that's going to come from result.error, and we can just console.error the entire result. And at the very end, we will set loading back to its original value of false. Now we can attempt to navigate to our checkout page. We'll make sure that we have some items added. I'll add a bag and a belt. We'll go to our cart. We'll add 2 belts. We'll hit checkout. And we see that it's loading. Then we're taken to our custom checkout page. We see that we're in test mode. We see our 2 items, as well as their quantity and a description. Feel free to remove this description property if you don't want to see this displayed here. Just delete it when you're adding an item to the cart. And then we can add all of our information to pay with card. We'll add our payment details, and for card, we just need to add 42 repeating in all of the fields. And we can choose whether billing address is same as shipping. We'll say that it is, and we'll hit pay. So we see that it's successful. We're taken to the success page. And the very last step before deployment is to complete this page. To do so, we can head to app, find our success folder, and using the search params prop, we can grab session ID. We'll begin by adding search params to our props interface. So on search params, we'll add session ID. That may not be there, so that'll be an optional string. We'll destructure search params from props. We'll grab the session ID, if it exists, from search params.session ID with a fallback value of an empty string. And then using Stripe, we can await stripe.checkout.sessions and retrieve a session based off of its ID. So we just need to pass in the session ID there, and we get back the checkout session of the payment that was just made. And from checkout session, we can get all of the customer related information from the customer details field. So we'll put that in a customer details variable. We can pass that down to another component called checkout session. We'll add customer details as a prop. And within this checkout session component, this is going to be helpful for saying to the user that the order is successful, to thank them, and to tell them where they can find their invoice by reminding them about the email that they provided during checkout. We'll grab customer details from props. Customer details is going to be of type Stripe checkout session.customer details or null. So we can copy all of that and just add it right here within the checkout session component. If we don't have any customer details and there's no session ID search param, we just want to say no checkout session found. If we do have one, we want to say thank you and insert the customer's name from customer details.name, and we'll tell them to check their purchase email from customer details.email. And one last step is we would like to clear out the cart when they're done checking out. So we'll use shopping cart, and from that object that it returns, we'll use the clear cart function. We can call this within a use effect if we have customer details, so we'll add that as a dependency. And if we have customer details, we want to call clear cart. So now let's save checkout session and success page, and perfect. We see the order was successful. Thank you. Check your purchase email for your invoice. And now we can either go back home or contact support if we need. To actually be able to send an email, an invoice on purchase, Stripe can do that automatically. We just need to go to settings, customer emails, and then we want to email customers about successful payments, and then hit save. Now that we've finished with our checkout process, we're in a perfect position to deploy our app to the web. For that, we're going to be using Vercel. You're going to need to have a free Vercel account, so make sure you're signed into that, as well as your GitHub account at github.com. We'll go to github.com/new to create a new repository, and we're going to set up a continuous integration pipeline by first pushing our code to GitHub and then deploying it with Vercel. Any future pushes to GitHub are then going to deploy our app via Vercel. So we're going to add a repository name. I'm going to call mine e-commerce app. I'll hit create repository. I'm going to open up a new terminal, and before I do anything there, I'm going to go to my Sanity client and remove my token, the token that we created. We don't need that anymore since we won't need to seed data in the future. I'm just going to remove a Git folder if it exists with rm-rf.git, and I'll run a clean git init, git add period to add all the files. I'll git commit deployment. Then you'll add your remote origin, and then we'll run git push-u origin main. After a few seconds, you should then be able to go to GitHub and see that all your code was pushed there successfully. And then we'll head to Vercel, and we'll add a new project. We'll import the new repo that we just created, and we'll leave the build and output settings at their default values, and we'll go to our .env file, copy all of these, and paste it in to the environment variable section. It gives us this nice ability to populate all of our environment variables without having to manually input them. And from there we just hit deploy. And after a few minutes we see that our app has been deployed to Vercel. If we take a look at the final result, we see everything's working like we would expect. We can sort our items, go to individual item pages, change the size, add them to the cart, go to the cart, and check out. I hope you enjoyed building this e-commerce app and it taught you a bunch about Next 13. Feel free to use this in order to build your own amazing full stack Stripe and Next.js powered applications. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next full stack project.